In this video, I'll be going through the 2022 paper 1 higher. Let's make a start. So question 1, we've got an inequality. We can start by adding 28 to each side. That gives us 7x is less than 35, and we can divide each side by 7, and that gives us x is less than 5. Question 2, write 128 as a product of its prime factors. So 122, we can draw factor tree, it's an even number, so you can half that, that's 262, and half that again, that's 231, and we can't simplify that any further, so we can write that as 2 squared times 31. Question 3, a delivery company has a total of 160 cars in the ratio 3:7, and then it's given us the percentage of electric, diesel, and petrol. Work out the number of cars that use petrol. So first we want to find out how many cars there are altogether. So we've got 116 total, but how many of them are cars? So we have cars to runs in a ratio of 3:7, and we know that's 10 parts, and the question says there's in 160 altogether. So how do you go from 10 to 160? You times it by 16. So since we're only interested in cars, we're going to multiply cars by 16, and that gives us 48. So 48 out of the 160 are cars, and then we are told there are electric, diesel, and petrol cars. We know that 1/8 are electric, 1/4, so 25% as a fraction is going to be 1/4. We'll just use fractions just to keep everything consistent, and the rest are petrol. We don't know what that is, so we'll call it X. So we know straight away that probabilities add up to 1. So 1/8 plus 1/4 plus X must equal 1. Now with the 1/4, we can times the top and bottom by 2 to make the denominator the same. So that'll be 1/8 plus 2/8 plus X is equal to 1. That becomes 3/8 plus X is equal to 1. So X therefore must be 5/8. So we know 5 out of 8 of the electric cars are petrol. So we're going to do 5/8 times the number of cars, which is 48. We can simplify this. 8 times 6 is 48, so that's going to leave us with 5 times 6, and the answer is 30. Question 4, write that as an ordinary number, so we're going to hop the decimal to the left 3 times, that's 1, 2, 3, so that's 0.00163. Write the next one in standard form, so we're going to hop the decimal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that's 4.38 times 10 to the power of 5 in standard form. And moving on to the next one, it's asking us to work out them two numbers multiplied together. So since we're multiplying, the order really doesn't matter what order we do them in, and we can almost ignore the brackets. So we can write this as 4 times 10 to the power of 3 times 6 times 10 to the power of minus 5. We'll do 4 times 6 first, so that's 24. And that leaves us with 10 to the power of 3 and 10 to the power of minus 5. Now when you multiply indices together, you add them. So 3 plus minus 5 will give us 24 times 10 to the power of minus 2. And as a standard number, we're going to hop the decimal 1, 2 to the left, so that's 0.24. But the question wants it in standard form, so we're going to hop the decimal 1 to the right, so that's going to be 2.4 times 10 to the power of minus 1. Question 5, you have a hexagon and a pentagon. Work out the size of the angle marked X. So we know angles around a point add up to 360, so we are interested in finding this angle here, and all three of them must add up to 360. So if we start off with hexagon, so the sum of interior angles in a hexagon, we can find using the formula n, which is n minus 2 times 180. So with this shape over here, it has 6 sides, so we are going to do 6 minus 2 times 180. So that's going to be 4 times 180. Now if you double 180, you get 360, and then if you double 360, you get 720. So that's going to be 720. It's got 6 sides altogether, so 720. Divide that by 6, and you get 120. So we know that this angle here is 120, and we can do the same for the other shape. So that's going to be n minus 2 times 180. You know, this has 5 sides, so that's going to be 5 minus 2 times 180. 5 minus 2 is 3, so 3 times 180, which is 540. And now we're going to divide that by the number of sides, so that's 540. Divide that by 5, and that gives us 108. So this is going to be 108. And as I said earlier, angles around a point add up to 360. So 120 plus 108 plus x is equal to 360. Now these two add together to give us 228 plus x, which is 360. We can subtract 228 from each side, and that gives us x is equal to 132. Moving on to question 6. Take care here with the negatives. So I'm just going to do the first one. So we're going to use brackets for negative numbers. -3, bracket -1 plus 1. So -1 squared is 1. Now take care here. This is -3 times -1, so that's +3. And then we have a +1, so all of this adds up to 5. And do the same for the remaining numbers, and you end up with this. And now we're going to plot that on the graph for part B. So we have -1 and 5, we have 0 and 1, we have 1 and -1, 2 and -1, 3 and 1, and 4 and 5 finally. And then we're going to connect these with a smooth line. So using the graph, find the estimates for x squared minus 3x plus 1. Now that's what we plotted, but here y is set to 0. So if you look at the y-axis, that's this axis here. Where is y equal to 0? So that's right here. So we're going to go across, and it's going to be that point there, and that point there. So your answer is going to be around 0.46 from what I can read, and 2.6 from what I can read. The mark scheme accepts anything in the range of 0.3 to 0.5 for the first one, and then 2.5 to 2.7 for the second point. Question 7, so we have cube A of mass 81 grams, cube B of mass 128 grams. The question's asking us to find the density. Now, remember with density, the formula is density is equal to mass over volume. So if I split this into looking at A and looking at B, so if I just draw a line straight down, we have A, the mass is given as 81, the volume. Now the volume of a cube is going to be the cross-section times length. So for example, the cross-section here is that face there, and we're going to multiply that by the length. So the cross-section area is going to be 3 times 3, and then the length is also 3 since it's a cube. So that's going to equal 27. So in this case, the density is going to be 81 over 27. They both go in the 9 times table, so that's 9 over 3, which simplifies to 3. With B, the mass is given as 128. The volume is going to be the cross-section, which is 4 times 4, and times that by the length, which gives us 64. And then the density is going to be 128 over 64. Now you can keep halving these numbers, so you can notice that 128 is twice 64, so that's going to be 2. So we are left with a ratio of 3 to 2 for A to B. Now question 8 is asking us to estimate the mean, using the frequency table. So we know in total it's done for 30 days, so this total is up to 30. So to find the mean, we're going to compare the frequency against the midpoint of the amount of snow. So the midpoint for this is going to be 5. For this, the midpoint is 15. This, the midpoint is 25. For this, the midpoint is 35. And for this, the midpoint is 45. So that then leaves us with 5 times 8 for the first one, plus 15 times 10, plus 25 times 7, plus 35 times 2, plus 45 times 3, all divided by the total, which is 30, and then that becomes 40 plus 150 plus 175 plus 70 plus 135 all over 30, and that becomes 570 over 30. And we do need to simplify this to give a number, so we can cancel out the 0 straight away. So that leaves us with 57 and 3, and we can just use the bus stop method. So 1s or 3, that leaves us with 27, so that's going to be 19. So question 9, we have a cube at the top, which is placed on top of a cuboid. and we're asked to find the surface area. So there's just one bit that you need to be careful with this in this question is, we'll come on to it in a little bit more detail, but this section here at the top surface, so you should colour the back in as well. And then this bit right here. So if we start off with the cube first, since it's asking us to find the surface area, so for the cube, it's going to be, I'll write that here. Each face of the cube is 4 times 4. Now you might be tempted to say there's 6 faces. So there's a top, there's 4 sides and a bottom, but we're only going to use the top and the 4 sides. So that's going to be 4 times 4, which is 16, times that by 5, which is 80. You're not going to worry about the bottom, so I'm just going to write here that the bottom of the cube is ignored for now. The surface area is just the outside area of the shape. And then on the bottom we have a cuboid. So with the cuboid we'll start with the bottom. So the bottom is 7 times 6, so that's that there, which is 42. And then we have the front and back, which are the same, so you can just write that as front slash back, which is going to be 7 times 5. And we're going to times that by 2 because there's 2 of them. So 7 times 5 is 35, times 2 is 70. And then we have the left and right, so we can just call that the sides, which is going to be 6 times 5. And again, there's 2 lots of them, so that's going to be 30 times 2, which is 60. And this is where you need to be careful. Finally, we have the top. And that's why I coloured it in. So the top is just the blue bit. So it is going to be 7 times 6, but not just that, because it's just the blue bit. It doesn't include the red bit. So we're then going to take that away from the red bit. And the red bit we know is the base of the cube, which we ignored, which is 4 times 4. So we are going to do 42 minus 16, which gives us 26. And then finally, we're going to add all these values together. And when you add all these numbers together, you end up with 2, 7, 8. So that's going to be 42 plus 70 plus 60 plus 26 plus 80. Moving on to question 10. So it's asking us to complete the cumulative frequency table. So we're just going to start with 10. And just a little hint here, it tells you it's for 100 days. So we know it must end up as 100 here. So the first one's 10. The next one is going to be, so just looking here, it's going to be 10 plus 15, which is 25. The next one is going to be 25 plus 25, which is 50. The next one is going to be 50 plus 30, which is 75. The next one is going to be I should say 80, sorry. It's 50 plus 30 is 80. The next one is going to be 80 plus 5, which is 85. And then finally, as a check, this is going to be 85 plus 15, and that is right. So moving on. So we are now asked to plot this. So the first point is 50 and 10. So 50 and 10 there. The next one is 125. So 100. And then 25 will be there. Next one is 150 and 50. So 150 and 50 is there. The next one is going to be 280. So 200 on the X, 80 on the Y. The next one is 250 and then 85. So 250 and then 85 is right there. And finally we have 300 and 100. And that is going to be right there. And then I'm going to connect this together. That's going to look something like this. Use your graph to find an estimate for the number of days on which the profit was less than 125. So each of these little squares goes up in 5. So 125 is going to be, that's 110, that's 120, that's 125 right there. So that's 125. So we're going to draw a line up from there. Touch the graph, draw a line across. So in my case, that value is 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. 36. Now the mark scheme accepts anything in the range of 35 to 39. Now for the next one, it's asking us for the interquartile range. So the interquartile range is the upper quartile take away the lower quartile. So the upper quartile is 3/4 and the lower quartile is 1/4. Now 3/4 of 100 is going to be 75, so that's going to be 75, which is there. So I'm going to draw a line across till it stretches the graph, and then a line down. And then the same for the lower quartile, so that's 25, so that 25 is going to be there. A line across and a line down. So with the lower quartile, it reads off as 100, and the upper quartile reads off as, that's 160, 170, 180, 188. So for me, that's 88, but the marks scheme accepts anything in the range of 85 to 93. So question 11, we have some sweets in the bag in the ratio of 94 to X. So we have lime to strawberry to orange, and that's in the ratio 94 to X. And it's saying the probability that it takes a lime flavored sweet is 3/7. Work out the value of X. Now we've been given some the ratios in the bag, so we know that the probability, if you were to write this as a probability, that would be 9 over the total, and in this case the total is 9 plus 4 plus X. But we've been given the probability of lime as 3/7, so we know that this equals to 3/7. Now we can solve this as an equation, so that'll become 9 times 7 is equal to 3 bracket 9 plus 4 plus X, which then can be written as 63 is equal to 3 bracket 13 plus X, which is 63, is equal to 3 times 13, which is 39, plus 3X. And then we can subtract 39 from each side, and that gives us 3X is equal to 24, and we can write X as 8. Question 12, express 0.17 recurring as a fraction. So we can write X is equal to 0.117. Notice in this case the dots on the 1 and the 7, so that means the 1 and the 7 are recurring. Now we want to make the decimals line up so we can cancel them, so let's go to 10x. So that's going to be hopping the decimal once to the left. So at the minute the decimals don't line up, so let's go to 100x. So that's 11.717171. The decimals still don't line up, so let's times it by 10 again. That's 1000x is equal to 117.171717. Now the decimals do line up. So if you notice, after the decimal point, this number here, it has 0.171717, and this also, after the decimal, has 0.171717. And the reason we want that is so we can cancel them out. So if I now focus on this here, and I take them away, so that's going to be 1000x minus 10, so that's 990x. And on the right hand side, the decimals cancel out, so we're left with 117 take away 1, which is 116. I could rearrange that to be written as 116 over 990. I don't need to simplify that, because the question just asks for it as a fraction. So 13, we want to show that the region A is equal to the area of region B plus C. So hopefully you've spotted with this that A is Pythagoras theorem, so I can write a small a here, a B here, and a C here, and I'll just write here the Pythagoras theorem. So Pythagoras, we have A squared is equal to B squared plus C squared. So we're going to start off with finding the area, as the question says show that the area of region A, B, and C. So we're going to find the area of region A. Now, the area of a circle is pi r squared, but we don't have a full circle, we have a semicircle. So with a semicircle, the area is equal to a half pi r squared. So that's what we're going to be using. So in this case, the area is a half pi r squared. So now we know that the radius, I've written this as A. Sorry, the diameter is going to be A. So the radius is going to be just half of that. So that's going to be a half A. So I can then write this as half pi, and the radius is going to be A over 2 all squared. And then that can simplify to 1 over 8 pi a squared. And similarly, the area of B is going to be half pi r squared, which can be written as a half pi b over 2 whole squared, which is 1 over 8 pi b squared. And then we have the area of C, which again is the exact same thing. And that's 1 over 8 pi c squared. Now we can write this in the form the question's given us. So the region of A, which is 1 over 8 pi a squared, is equal to the region of B, which is 1 over 8 pi b squared, plus the region of C, which is 1 over 8 pi c squared. Let me just write that properly. And now I can times each side by 8 and divide it by pi. That will cancel out the 8 and the pi and leave me with a squared is equal to b squared plus c squared. And that is my proof. Question 14 is asking us to estimate the gradient of the graph at 2. So it is asking us to estimate the gradient. So we're going to go to 2 seconds, put a little dot there, get a ruler out, draw a tangent at that point. Make sure there's even space on either side of the point. So if I just create a different color, draw a line straight through that. Don't worry about drawing the line too long, but in this case I've drawn it long on purpose. So if I pick an easy point to work with, so an easy point to me looks like, let's start here and let's go to there. So in terms of x, that's 4. So that's me starting here. Let me just use a different color in fact. That's me starting here, going across by 4, and then going up until I meet the line. So that is 0.8 here, and that is around 4.8 there. It's asking for an estimate, so I'll make my life easier. So that distance there is 4, so it's going to be 4 over 4, which is 1. Now the mark scheme accepts anything in the range of 0.7 to 1.1. What does the area under the graph represent? So that is going to be the distance travelled. So with 15, it's asking us to prove that it's a straight line. So hopefully you can see that these two are both multiples of each other. So I can say that A to C is essentially 5 times A to B. Essentially the same as writing as A to C is 5 times A to B. And then a statement, since it's proved, so you're also going to conclude with a statement and say that since they're both multiples of each other, so since AC is multiple of AB, they rely on straight lines. So then we have D, E, F are 3 points on a straight line such that D to E, and then we have E to F, find the ratio of D to F, D to E. So we already have D to E, we just need to find D to F. So to go from D to F, since they all lie on a straight line, we're just going to have to add the two together. So then essentially D to F is going to be D to E plus E to F. So that's going to be 3E plus 6F plus, well, I can write the plus, but it'll be minus 10.5E minus 21F. And that's 7.5 minus 7.5E, sorry, minus 15F. So that's D to F. And then D to E is 3E plus 6F. So now comparing these two, so let me just write that properly. Comparing these two, you can see that to go from here to here, we essentially times by 2.5. So if this was 1, this would be 2.5. And that's the ratio. And if you want to write that as whole numbers and not decimals, we can times each side by 2. So that'll be 2 and 5 there. So 5 to 2. So moving on to the next one. Now, this one is quite a tricky question in terms of understanding it. So the first thing you want to keep in mind is that you first do the theory and then you do the practical. And we're also told that the two ends are independent. So the way the tree diagram is drawn is the theory is done first, and then you do the practical. So here I can just write that this bit is the theory. So the probability of passing the theory is 0.75. So the probability of failing the theory is 0.25. And then once you've passed the theory, only then would you take the practical. So the practical comes after the theory. So if I draw another line here and here, and then here, and here, and then just write here maybe practical. So the probability of passing the practical is what they want us to work out. So it says work out the probability of passing the practical. We don't know what it is. So we can then say that pass is X because we don't know what it is. And fail is obviously going to be 1 minus X. So again, pass is X, fail is 1 minus X. So the reason I'm using X is because that's what the question's asking us to find. We don't know what it is. Here, for theory, they gave us the values, so we wrote them in. So now you're probably wondering, well, what do we do with this number here? So if you read the statement, it says the probability of passing only one of the two parts. So there's a theory and a practical. So what combinations are they of just passing one? Well, the first one is going to be you're going to pass the theory and you're going to fail the practical. And then the second route is going to be that you're going to fail the theory, but you're going to pass the practical. So there's two ways you can go about this. So if I write that out, so that's going to be 0.5 times X times 1 minus X, sorry. So that's the yellow bit, plus the probability of 0.25 X, which is failing the theory and passing the practical, is equal to 0.36. That's what this number here represents. This is what's key for this question, is understanding what does this 0.36 actually represent. It represents the probability of passing only one of the two parts. So here, what I'm saying is either you're going to pass and then fail, and that's this bit here, or you're going to fail and then pass, and then that's this bit here, and then these two add up to represent 0.36. And now we can solve this and find the value of X. And notice what X is the probability of passing the practical, and that's what the question's asked for. So if I expand this out, that's 0.75 minus 0.75X plus 0.25X is equal to 0.36. And then we can, that becomes minus 0.5X, so that would be 0.75, collect the like terms, minus 0.5X is equal to 0.36, and can now subtract minus 0.75 from each side, and that leaves you to minus 0.5X is equal to minus 0.39. I can times each side by -1 to get rid of the negative, and I can divide each side by a half. Now dividing by a half is the same as timesing it by 2, so that means X is equal to 0.78, and that is all the question asked us to find. So hopefully that makes sense. So question 17, we have been given, let's start off straight here. So that's y is directly proportional to the square root of t. So we can say y is equal to k root t. We are told that y is 15 when t is 9. And we can say that 15 over root 9 is equal to k. And we know root 9 is equal to 3. So we have 15 over 3, which makes 5 is equal to k. So we can rewrite that as y is equal to 5 root t. So that's that there. And then we have t is inversely proportional to the cube of x. So we can write that as t is equal to k over x cubed. We are told when x is 2, t is 8. 8 is equal to k over, now 2 cubed is going to be 2 times 2, which is 4, and then 4 times 2, which is 8. So that is going to mean that k is equal to 64, and we can sub that into there. So that's going to be t is equal to 64 over x cubed. So now the question is saying find a formula for y in terms of x. So if we start off with this here, so we have y is equal to 5 root t. Now with root t, we can substitute in that t there. So that will then become 64 over x cubed. And it says give your answer in its simplest form. So we can rewrite this as y is equal to 5 root 64 over root x cubed. Now root 64 becomes 8. So this can be written as 8. And then we're left with 8 times 5, which is y is equal to 40 over root x cubed. Question 18 is asking us to work out the value of this fraction and show you're working. Now the easiest way I think to do this is to go step by step with each one of these. So I'll color them. So we have that to deal with, and then we have this fraction to deal with, and then we have this denominator to deal with. So if I just pick my pen, so if you start off with the green bit, so we will write this all as a fraction in the end anyway, so just use a different color. So if you start off with the green bit, we have 5, 4, 9, all to the power of minus a half. So let's focus on what's inside the brackets first. So if I do 5 times 4 to convert this from an improper fraction to a proper fraction, 5 times 4 is 45, plus 4 at the top is 49, so that's 49 over 9 is equal to the power of minus a half. Now the negative just means flipping it. So if I flip this, that's going to become 9 over 49 to the power of half. All I've now done is got rid of the negative. And now the power of half just means square root. So the square root of 9 is 3. The square root of 49 is 7. So I can now write this as 3 over 7 here. Now if I change my color to blue and I look at the other fraction, which is 4, 2, and 3. So that's going to be 4 times 3, which is 12, plus 2, which is 14. So that's going to be 14 over 3. So just write the multiplier in there. And then finally I have the red one, which is 2 to the power of minus 3, which is the same as 1 over 2 to the power of 3, which is 1 over 8. So I can write that as 1 over 8. So hopefully you can see we've simplified that down a lot. Now what I can do is cancel out the 3's here. That 3 and that 3 cancel out. So we're left with 14 over 7 divided by 1 over 8. 14 over 7 is the same as 2. And that's 2 divided by 1 over 8. And we can use the KCF method now. So that's 2 divided by 1 over 8, which is keep, change, and flip. And that just becomes 16. Moving on to question 19. So it's asking us to solve this and give our answer in that form there. Now this form is some form of a hint. It should remind you of the quadratic formula. So if you do get that hint at this point, you will have a slight advantage because you know where this is pointing us. So just to remind you, the quadratic formula looks something like this. So let's start with making the denominators the same. So we have 1 over 2x minus 1 plus 3 over x minus 1 is equal to 1. So I can times the top and bottom on the left by x minus 1. And I can times the top and bottom on the right by 2x minus 1. And what that then means is I've got a common denominator of 2x minus 1, x minus 1. And at the top I have got x minus 1 plus 3 bracket 2 x minus 1 is equal to 1. If I expand that out, so that would be x minus 1 plus 6x minus 3 all over 2x minus 1, x minus 1 is equal to 1. So if I collect the like terms at the top, we have 7x minus 4. And then if I move the denominator over to the right, I'm left with 2x minus 1, x minus 1. If I expand that out, that'll become 2x squared minus 2x minus x, which is minus 3x plus 1. And then on the right, we still have 7x minus 4. So if I now move the terms over from the left to the right, so that's going to be minus 7x on each side and plus 4 on each side. So that's going to give us, and I'm not going to write this equals here, so I'll write 2x squared minus 10x plus 5 is equal to 0. And now to get this in the form of the question's asking for, we're going to sub it into the quadratic formula. So quadratic formula, I'll write that again here. So the b is -10. So in this case, it becomes 10 because we have a negative there and a negative there. That becomes minus 10. So that just leaves us with a positive 10. That's plus minus b squared, which is 10 squared, minus 4 times 2 times 5, all over 2a, which is 2 times 2. And that's 10 plus minus root 100 minus 40, all over 4. And then that's 10 plus minus root 60 over 4. Now, if you notice the question, it does have a 2 in the denominator, so we need to keep going, yeah? So we can't divide both sides by 2 yet. And that's a hint that this can be simplified. So this can be written as root 4 root 15, which becomes 2 root 15. So I can write this as 10 plus minus 2 root 15 divided by 4. And now I can divide with the 4 at the bottom. So that will become 5 plus minus root 15 over 2. So moving on to question 20, the center of a circle with a point of minus 1, 3. It's got another coordinate a that sits on it, and it's asking us to find the equation of the tangent of the line of the circle at a. So if I was to draw this out first, so we have that, let's just say that's 0. So this can be minus 1 and 3, so that's the midpoint of the circle. And then we have somewhere along here, we have 6, and then we have 8 somewhere along there. Then if I draw the circle, perfect, and the center of the circle is roughly somewhere there. Yep, so if I was to draw a line from the center to the edge, so there's a point here called A, and the coordinates are 6, 8, and we know it's got a tangent at this point, so that's going to look something like, I'm not sure why I drew it so small, but that'll look something like that. So roughly that's what the graph looks like, and it's normally good to draw this out. So I've drawn the circle, I've drawn the center point, and I'll label that as well, in fact. So that's going to be minus 1, 3. That's the midpoint of the circle. We've got point A, and it's asking us to find the tangent to the circle. Find the equation to the tangent. Okay, so the blue line is essentially what we're trying to find. It's the equation to the blue line. So I'm just going to call it YB. So that's Y for the blue line is equal to mx plus c. So that's the formula that we have. So we do have values for x and y, but we need to find the gradient. So in order to find the gradient, the only line that we have quite a bit of information for is that green line. So if I was to draw that green line here, and let me just draw that again. So that's the green line that we've been given. So I know that this is minus 1, 3, and that's c. And at a we have 6, minus 8. So I know that to go across, it goes across from minus 1 to 6. So it goes across by 7, and it goes up from 3 to 8. It goes up by 5. So I know that the gradient of the green line is equal to y over x. So that's the run or rise over run. So I can now use this to find the gradient of the blue line. And if you're wondering how, because the radius is perpendicular at 90 degrees to the tangent, when two lines are perpendicular, so in this case we have the gradient of the green line times the gradient of the blue line must equal minus 1. So that's just a rule for lines that are perpendicular. So in this case we have 5 over 7 times the gradient of the blue line is equal to minus 1, which means the gradient of the blue line is equal to minus 7 over 5. So now we know what the gradient of the blue line is. If we bring this equation down with us down here, so that becomes y blue is equal to mx plus c. So we now have y blue is equal to minus 7 over 5x plus c. But we also know something else about this blue line, that it has got this coordinate that it passes through, which is 6. 6, 8, not minus 8, 6, 8, and that should say 8 there as well. So now if I sub in the points, x is 6 and y is 8. So y is 8 and x is 6. So that becomes minus 42 over 5 plus c. Now you can move that over to the left, so that's going to become 8 plus 42 over 5. And that's going to leave you with 82 over 5 is equal to c. So we can now write this equation as yb is equal to minus 7 over 5x plus c, which is 82 over 5. However, the question does not want it in this form. It wants it in the form ax plus by plus c is equal to 0. So let's move everything over to the left, starting with x. It wants x first, so let's write 7. So we're going to move that over, but then we're left with y. We're not going to call it yb anymore, we'll just call it y. And then we're going to move c over as well. It's going to be 82 over 5. I call it c, but what I really mean is it's not really c, it's the intercept, which we do call c. So that's 0. But notice it doesn't have any denominators in the question. So we can times each side by 5, so that becomes 7x plus 5y minus 82 is equal to 0. And then moving on to the final question, which is question 21. This is the trickiest question on this paper. So the way we're going to find the shaded region in this question is just to clarify on the left. Hopefully that gives me a circle. Let me try again. So I'm going to firstly label these circles. So this is going to be A. I'm going to label this B, and I'm going to label this C. Actually, I'm going to use a different color, because I'll need them colors later on. So that's A, B, and C. So let's imagine this is circle B. It's asking us to find the shaded region. So essentially, to find the shaded region, I need to find the area of B, which is the area of the circle, pi r squared. So remember, the formula for the area of a circle is pi r squared. And then I need to take that away from the two other regions inside. So if I just draw that here. Perfect. And that there. No. I'm not sure what it will let me do. But anyway, that's close enough. So essentially, I then need to take it away from, if I get my marker, from this yellow region. So I need to find the area of the yellow regions, and I need to take it away from the overall area of the circle, and then I'll get my answer. So we have been told, just bear that in mind, that's our approach with this one. So we have been told that A to B is 4, B to C is also 4, and now with this, when you go from the center of the circle to the edge, so if I go from the center of A to the edge of A, this is going to be 4, because that's the radius. And then the same, if I go from the center of B to the edge of B, that's also going to be 4, because that's going from the center to the circumference, which is the radius. So essentially this is going to be 4. This length here is also 4. This length here is also 4. Since all of these lengths are the same, we can say that this is an equilateral triangle of an angle 60. I can draw these triangles here, and you'll see why we're using these triangles in just a second. Remember, the aim here is to find that yellow region, because once you know what the yellow region is, we just need to take it away from the area of the circle, and then we've solved the question, which is the shaded region. So that's that. And now to find the area of the yellow region is going to be finding the area of the triangle, which is, let me just kind of put that in. So that's going to be the green area. So obviously there's 4. Let me just use a smaller color actually. There's obviously 4 triangles, but I'm just going to color one of them in so we know what we're dealing with. So the first step is to find this area. I'm going to use the same color as well. So the area of the circle, of the triangle, area of triangle, actually I'll keep this down here so you can see the question as well. It's going to be a half A, B, sine C. So it's worth bearing in mind here that you will need to know the value of sine 60, which is root 3 over 2. So that's going to be a half A times B. So the sides of the triangle are just 4 and 4, and then sine 60 And 4 times 4 is 16, divide that by 4 is 8, and then you do 8 times root 3 over 2, and that leaves us with 4 root 3 centimeters squared. Okay, so now essentially we found one triangle, but we can times this by 4 to get all 4. And now the only bit that we're left with is finding this region here. So in order to get the yellow region, we need the triangles, which we do, and these little pockets here. Now, in order to find these little pockets here, we can find the area of the sector. So the area of the sector, again, I'll highlight it, is going to be the area including this curved bit. So notice what the difference between what we just found, which was the triangle, and what we're just about to work out now is that this is called the area of the sector. And that's good enough. So I'll use the same color again, just to avoid any confusion. So if I use now blue, I'm going to call this area of sector, and that's going to be the angle, which is that there, which is 60. So that's going to be 60 over 360 times pi r squared, which is 4 squared. So that's going to be 1/6 pi 16. That can be written as 8 over 3 pi. So just again to get my pen out there, what we've now figured out is this whole region here. And what we figured out earlier was just the triangle. Now you might be wondering, why did we do that? We did that so we can find what this little pocket here is. Because if I take away this and this, I'll know what this little pocket here is, and then I know what all 8 of these pockets are, and then I've figured out what this yellow area is, and I can double that to get this yellow area and get closer to my answer. So if I now use a different color, so we'll call this a segment, and I'll color this in here as well. So a segment is like this, just this pocket here, and there's 8 of these. So if I use that color, so area of segment is equal to the area of the sector in blue. So that's going to be area, actually I'll use the same color. That'll be area of sector minus area of triangle, and I'll just use black ink now. So area of sector is going to be 8 over 3 pi, and the area of triangle is going to be 4 and 3, and subtracting the 2 will give us the area of the segment. So now hopefully you can see where we've gotten with this. So remember, our goal was to find the shaded area, and I said to you at the start that the shaded area is going to be the full circle B, full circle, which we're just looking at circle B, right, that full circle, minus the 8 segments. So if you're wondering what the 8 segments are, so one segment is this little pocket here. So there's 8 of these. There's that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. So 8 segments minus 4 triangles. And essentially this forms up these 2 here, make up the yellow area that I showed at the start. So that area there, let me just undo that. That area there and that area there, and we're going to take that away from the whole circle to leave us with what, just this and this, which is what the question is asking for. So with the full circle, it's going to be pi r squared. So we know in this case it's going to be pi 4 squared. We know the 8 segments is going to be 8 times the segment, and that's right here. That's one segment, so it's going to be 8 lots of these. So that's going to be 8 over 3 pi minus 4 root 3 minus 4 times 4 root 3, and that becomes 16 pi minus 8 times 8, which is 64 pi over 3. Now careful here, it's a negative and a negative, which makes a positive. That's 32 root 3 minus 16 root 3, and then that can become 48 pi over 3 minus 64 pi over 3 plus 16 root 3. And we can collect these 2 together, and that will give us minus 16 pi over 3 plus 16 root 3. And you can write your answer as 16 root 3 minus 16 pi over 3. And that's the last question on this paper. So as always, I hope you found this video useful, and I'll catch you in the next one.